42. Alva. I had lived in Stockholm for a year. I had spent a semester at college where she, was probably perceived as childish or odd by my classmates. I had broken contact with my mother and father with renewed vigor and continued to attend the 12-step program in Stockholm. It was a very warm and welcoming group of people my own age. Fredrika was not used to warmth and support. She was the protector and had been created to fight. Like a rusty car pumped full of sugar water instead of gasoline, she collapsed. The warmth and hope caused Fredrika's armor to crack. Inside the armor were children of different ages. They had been frozen in time. They were terrified and desperate and needed to be rescued. I was also in the group, although I was an adult, but I was very airy, very fleeting. I had been up in the treetops and diving around in the air currents recently. Now I was here with a person who was obviously hugely broken, with ghost children who were badly abused, and a life that was once again threatened by trauma chaos. What I felt more than anything was phobia towards the children inside. Phobia is what someone with JD often feels for their parts before they learn to understand, communicate, and process trauma among themselves. From Wikipedia. A specific phobia involves a strong fear, phobic anxiety of certain situations, objects, animals, or activities. The fear can be triggered by the mere thought of the trigger, and the person will do anything to avoid the trigger. The phobia leads to avoidance. I was half aware that the children were calling for help to support lines and hotlines, and that they were telling the people on the other line about sexual abuse. They were crying and shaking, but it felt like a dream to me, just as vague. Every day I struggled to stay alive and not jump in front of the train. I couldn't and wouldn't talk about what was happening because in a way it wasn't happening. Anyway, it was far too much to bring to a 12-step meeting or to burden anyone else with. Fredrika fought to regain control, and she led the way to 2 organizations in Stockholm that provided support for victims of sexual abuse. I also got in touch with a social worker through support lines, and the crisis subsided. Fredrika was back at the helm, but not as steadily as before. I noticed that people were reacting to me when I woke up in a lecture with people giggling at me. I came home wearing strange clothes and was surprised when someone I encountered during a walk in the woods asked me why I had screamed. Yet I, nor Fredrika, could put into words what we were experiencing. So instead of words, we used paint and sat and painted all the things that blocked, that ruled and controlled, that scared and distorted and tormented me. Everything had to get out of me and onto paper instead. The sheets were filled with rape scenes and grew into a large collection in a few months. To be accurate, it was my alter ego Sarah who painted. The others showed each one's trauma, but had held them that it would have held them frozen in time, and she illustrated in the same way she had drawn pictures of me and Elsa earlier. And then I saw a program on TV about a young woman suffering from something called DID. I saw how she shifted and how she behaved like a child, how she ended up in strange places with amnesia. And finally I could make the realization that I have DID, dissociative identity disorder. "43. Bo." Esther is leaning against some pillows on the mattress, with feverish eyes and gray skin. She thinks she is having a temporary break, Her body is ravaged by the labor of birth. She is too mentally and physically exhausted to do anything but smile dreamily and take small, shallow breaths. He comes down to the basement and looks around wonderingly. Dad, I'm glad you came. Bo is feeling much better, says Eva, who has stood in front of him with her hands clasped and her dark hair over her shoulders. They are starving and dizzy, but they have to. They give everything they have left. He looks around and sees Esther. Esther is fine. She's just a bit tired. The baby is coming, says Eva. His daughters gather around him, happy that he has come and will not abandon us, grateful for all he has given us, willing to do anything to help, to love, to support him. Yes, you girls don't make it easy for me, he begins and continues to complain about the work and responsibilities, and they listen. They embrace him with acceptance. He owns us. Lisa grabs the table leg just as he is in the safe embrace of his self-pity and slams him so that he lands on the floor. Adina is immediately there and ties his hands and legs together with the rope she made from rags during the night. The sisters' heads then turn towards the door where Lisa now stands. Then Lisa has already taken a leap up the stairs. The fresh air from the hallway makes her skin tingle. There she stands. Lisa is strong like a hunted animal, desperate, pushes her down the stairs. There she lies, trembling in the basement. She twists like a worm on a hook and stares in horror at her daughters. They stare back calmly and thoughtfully. Why? Asks Ada quietly. We loved you, says Eva. But Lisa growls, where are Eva's children? They are in kindergarten. They are safe, I promise. Out of the darkness comes Naomi with flying hair and curved claws and jumps on her. Lisa binds her. They go up the basement stairs, carrying Ma and Esther's bodies, and close the door behind them. The bolt turns in the lock. They stand in the hallway. Fresh air draws across their skin like an alien caress. Here we were children once. This is also our grave. They must move on now. From Judith to Eva, there is a shiver of fear and desperation to reach beyond this house. Miriam is shaking with fear, but she follows, hidden in the crowd approaching the front door. The life in us is automatically drawn to the outside, as health seeks health, freedom seeks freedom. I'll get help, Lisa says. From the neighbors, I'll run there. She has hardly any muscles or bones to run with, but she doesn't care, and now we know that sometimes it's courage and not food that carries you. No, don't go, cries Judith. Lisa fumbles for Judith's hands and finds it. Judith, I must. Judith, Miriam, and Naomi are trembling and shaking. Esther and Bo, Ada reminds us. She helps Esther to crawl out. Eva gently lifts me up and opens the door. Up there, the sky is mild and gray on this Saturday in April. Their eyes roam over the green blades of grass, over the gentle bending of big tree and the welcoming quiver of yellow bush. Their eyes sweep over nature, the yellow streaks, the flowering trees, the tulip buds in the soil and the road leading away. Their brains can barely process the visual impressions. And then the world opens up to the Wilson sisters again. There you are, says the world, Let's welcome, let's feed, let's carry. Our neighbors Bert and Alma have already spotted us. We scare them when they are out walking the dog. Suddenly there are 9 ghosts haunting the rural residential street. Bert says to Alma, "Look, it's the girls out there. Alma, it's the Wilson daughters. Call someone." And so 2 ambulances arrive while my sisters are still standing on shaky legs on the lawn, trying to get on, but not knowing how. 4 paramedics run up to us, check my body and Esther's, and call for reinforcement. Quick as a flash, Esther and I are put into separate ambulances. The 4th paramedic stays with my sisters on the lawn while I am rushed to the hospital. I stay with my sisters for a little while longer because they are crying and shouting, "Bo!" A young woman from the ambulance with blonde hair and blue eyes smiles. "Everything will be fine." Miriam melts in an instant. But then I am back with myself on the stretcher and the sirens and the quick hands of the paramedics listening and palpating, inserting IV and adjusting an oxygen mask. Chapter 42 and 43 comments. I describe in a somewhat matter-of-fact way what things were like when the defenses crumbled, that is, when Fredrika finally lost her composure. The kindness and acceptance from the self-help group became too much for her, us, and at the same time the situation felt insecure and threatening in relation to my father, who had intruded and gotten close again. I also had a book published just then, and all of this together was overwhelming for Fredrika, who essentially drew her energy from feelings of guilt. Although Fredrika and I were capable in many ways, there were always 9 parts that simply couldn't keep up. 9 children pushing their way forward and taking over. This leads to chaos, which leads to even more dissociation. 9 time travelers who are terrified, who are lost, but who are desperately seeking a chance to heal the soul and come home. The intense fear or phobia has less to do with the circumstances here and now than with the circumstances back then in childhood. Then it is also frightening for many to realize that they have DID. For me, it was terrifying to realize what the situation was. It came with fear of death. Everything that had been so terribly important was taken away from Fredrika and from me too. Being normal, good, and responsible. Instead, I was hopeless, a mental case. The feelings surrounding self-worth and competence are dramatic. The fact is that when you create your subpersonalities in the subconscious, it is through a strong sense of worthlessness. You internalize abuse and mistreatment, which means you feel bad because you are treated badly. When the parts emerged with their acute traumas, the fear told me that I was not only traumatized, but so worthless that I would cease to exist. That is how intense the feelings and fears were during this time. But I wanted to heal. I had to heal. Bo and the sister's physical condition is, in some way, a reflection of my spiritual state. Bo, who is the soul, is running out of steam. Esther, who is vulnerability, is losing everything. The little ones are in shock. The big ones are fighting.